Hello and welcome everyone to StudyTravel TV Live. I'm Bethan Norris, Senior Editor of StudyTravel magazine, and I'd like to introduce you to a brand new programme where we'll share news, statistics, and invite industry people to discuss topical items. A couple of housekeeping points before we get started. Firstly, please don't unmute yourself unless a StudyTravel team member unmutes you.
Hello everyone, I'm Matthew Knott, news editor of StudyTravel magazine. For the best viewing experience, please put the call in side-by-side speaker view. You'll see an icon in the top right corner where you can select the view.
In today's broadcast, we'll be starting with the headlines, and then we'll be joined by Paolo Barilari, President of FELCA, and Eleri Maitland, Spokesperson for Groupement, as we discuss the latest news. If you have any questions for the presenters or guest speakers throughout the broadcast, please post them in the chat box and we will read them out at the end. A big thank you to our sponsor, Londonist.
Okay, so let's have a run through of the main stories of the last week. First up, the UK government has confirmed that international travel for England will be relaxed from May 17th, and that 12 countries and territories will be on the green list, which means no quarantine period will be required. This list includes Portugal and Singapore.
The majority of countries will be on the amber list, meaning that a 10-day isolation period will be required in a homestay or residence, although this can be shortened to 5 days with the optional test to release scheme. Travel from red list countries is limited to UK residents and requires hotel quarantine. Turkey has recently been added to the red list.
The international education industry has been left disappointed by the cautious reopening. Language School Association English UK said that the brevity of the green list and the costs associated with travel presented devastating barriers to doing business this summer and called for more sector-specific support from the government.
Next up, the Government of Australia has announced that students will be able to work more than the regular 40 hours per fortnight in the tourism and hospitality sectors, and that students can also switch to a new COVID pandemic event 408 visa to work full-time for 12 months.
The move has angered many stakeholders in the international education industry who are concerned about student cancellations. Ian Pratt, Managing Director of Lexis Education, told StudyTravel magazine that it could devastate some providers whose sole income is currently from onshore students extending their programs.
Simon Costain, General Manager of agency group Go Study Australia, said the whole concept of genuine student was threatened by the rule, and said that colleges were immediately reporting requests from students to switch. StudyTravel understands that industry peak bodies made urgent representations to the Immigration Minister to raise concerns.
Next to Ontario, which will remain open to international students, despite a recent request from the Premier of the province for a suspension, according to English and French School Association Languages Canada.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said last week that the government was considering the request from Ontario. However, Languages Canada said it has received confirmation that the measure will not be implemented and that arrivals will continue as previously for Ontario.
Languages Canada also said that Ontario has ended its requirement for a COVID test on the last day of the quarantine period, and reminded that international students are eligible to receive vaccinations in Canada.
Back to the UK now, where the Independent Schools Council has released its annual census, showing that the number of international students enrolled as of January 2021 was down by 16% compared with the previous year to 24,670.
The top source country, China, decreased by around 27% to just over 6,000 students, but second place Hong Kong actually increased enrolment, something that ISC said could be attributable to the UK government policy on Hong Kong British nationals overseas.
StudyTravel magazine's recent global agency survey on agency business in 2020 showed that 73% of students who travelled overseas for secondary education headed to the UK.
Over in the USA, the Department of Education has announced a new $36 billion COVID support package for higher education institutions and their students. The department has confirmed that all students, regardless of immigration status, will be eligible for support, which is targeted at those in emergency need.
This represents a change from previous policy under the Trump administration, when only domestic students could receive support. The move was welcomed by the international education industry.
And lastly, for our news stories, the UK-based pathway provider QA Higher Education has announced a new partnership with the University of South Wales to create an international pathway college and support international students to access degree programs at the university.
And that brings us to the end of our news headlines segment. We're now going to bring in our special guests, Paolo and Eleri, up on screen. And a reminder that you can put your questions in the chat. If they are related to the discussion topics, we'll bring those in. Otherwise, we'll answer them in our open Q&A at the end. Do please make sure your name and organisation are in your Zoom name, or add that to the question.
Okay, so welcome everyone. So firstly, we'll come back to that. Hello. So firstly, we'll come back to that first story about England's new travel rules. In the last 2 weeks, we've had news of Malta reopening its language schools from early June, Italy and France reopening to tourism, hopefully soon, and also of the EU's plans to try and kickstart the travel industry, both with internal and external travel. So what are your current feelings or expectations for the summer business? Paolo, maybe if we could come to you first.
Hello, everyone. First of all, let me express best wishes for this new project, the StudyTravel TV Live. I mean, it's very interesting. So just a very good job.
Thank you.
Expectations for this coming summer, it's really depending on a few things. First of all, flights availability. I mean, to reach the destination, we need a reliable flight routes. And I don't know how many airline companies are ready to provide the same number of connections as before in 2019. So this is the first thing. Will our students able to travel and travel at a reasonable price? We don't even know how much it will be to fly from, let's say, Paris or London or Berlin to Dublin or to London. The other thing is, I have no update on the green passport. I think having a document that allows students and tourists and everybody to travel freely, showing that they're being vaccinated or they have a negative test, this would help very much people on the move. And the other thing is what you said before in the news, the list of countries divided into colors, into color groups. For example, now a lot of countries are in the amber list, which is something that doesn't help to travel, especially in the summer from the European countries, the market that I know best. The length of the stay for, studying English or other languages is very short. It's an average of 2, 3, 4 weeks. And if you need to be waiting in quarantine, this really would negatively affect the bookings.
Thank you. Eleri, if we could come to you. Same, how's your feeling for the summer ahead?
Yeah, I think the situation is improving psychologically as well as practically here in France. And as you know, we're opening up. The first slot is next week, the first lifting of some restrictions next week, and then again on the 9th of June. But I think Paolo's point about flights is very important. I have a personal case right now of 2 people wanting to book, but Ryanair isn't flying into France until the 9th of June. So they want to book the last week of May. So, we're all caught a little bit because we're having lots of announcements, but we don't really know the details yet, do we, about anything?
Okay.
So I guess that will sorry, Bethan, I just guess that would translate into last minute, mostly European booking and mostly last minute, because it's very difficult for us from at this moment to be precise about what will be required and what won't be required.
Okay, and what sort of questions are you finding that students are asking about their particularly safety and sort of measures taken by schools when they arrive?
From a personal point of view, I mean, most of the mails are not about quarantine, actually. They're asking particularly about what measures we have in the school. I don't know if Paolo, if that's what students are asking you. Quarantine doesn't seem to be part of their questioning. They're asking how many students there are we doing activities, what's the situation in France, sometimes what's the R number. They're all health related questions.
Yes, they're also linking the decision to go or to stay home to the quarantine I've been experiencing. But of course, what they ask is, first of all, safety measures implemented by the schools. They also ask for flexibility. So they're very, very much scared if something happens, and if I cancel last minute, what is going to happen? If I get the money back, if I lose everything. So flexibility and milder cancellation policy, this helps a lot. And something else is also, how many students will I find? Is the school able to provide all the levels? Because they presume that the school will have less students than in 2019. And so they're worried that, I mean, is the school able to provide a B2 or a C1 or something? So it is really, they are trying to see into the future and see how the situation will be when they arrive at the school. Another question is about accommodation. A question is it safer to stay with a host family, or it is safer to stay in a residential accommodation? So all this information, of course, it's very important that the school provides all this kind of information to the agents.
What kind of things, Eleri, as a provider, what kind of things are you doing to address those points that Paolo's just said?
The health and safety, yeah, I agree. The questions are, it's interesting because we are actually getting the same sorts of questions from either side. People are generally booking more residential if they're 18 plus, because you have to be 18 plus in France to book a residence. Personally, at French, we're can I say something about the school, what we're going to do? Because it's I think it's rather exciting.
Yes, definitely.
Because we've got a local company that's got breakthrough technology with a revolutionary new product. It's a sort of protective film, that covers all surfaces, and we're going ahead with asking them to come into the school. We're the first educational establishment in the city to have it done, although our Metropolitan Council has been using this method in all the transport systems and on the bikes and so forth. So everything will be sprayed with this protective film, which actually eats COVID and other viruses. So we think this is going to offer an extra layer of protection for the staff, first and foremost, because we haven't had so many students in the school for the last year, as you can imagine, since September last. So we're looking for an increase. And we think this will be reassuring for everybody, for staff, students, host families, the residences that we work in close partnership with. So it's rather exciting because it's breakthrough technology. It is available. So anyone who'd like to have more information about this, it's eco-friendly, it's odorless, it doesn't cause, you don't have to come into Hauser suits to be around it. So it's interesting breakthrough, I think.
Okay, fantastic. And do you think all these sort of different concerns will change the way that agents have to counsel their students, Paolo?
Yes, this already happens. I mean, the number of worries are quite many. So the way we counsel students, it is completely different. It's a daily basis work. I mean, the student first asks a lot of information, then actually books, and then it's every twice or three times a week, they call again to check how the situation evolved. So it is really, but this is something that happens to all of us. I mean, we just watching the news and seeing where are we going, what can we do and what we cannot do. So the students are much more in contact with the agents, just to have a lot of information that they find vital. And especially if a visa is involved. For example, the US or other countries where the European students, they need visa to get into. This is also something that raises the level of difficulty, because embassies, they do not work at the same rhythm as before. So it is a much tighter connection and collaboration with the students, and also with the schools, because the first question is the school that I've been working with so well in the past open or not? So it's not that I have the whole portfolio of schools as before. I must check if the junior courses are running, if the school is open, if the courses are the same, if there is a quarantine, if the school offers an online course during the first days, in order not to lose these days locked home or locked into an hotel or a residential accommodation. So it is much more difficult, but it's also something that gives value, even more value, to the agent's work.
And we touched a little bit on sort of payment terms and cancellation terms, but from your perspective as an agent and from what you've been discussing with other agencies, is that going to be a sort of key factor in who agents will send students to this summer? They'll need to know that these kind of policies are in place.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think all the agents all over the world are looking for insurance policies that are covering almost everything. So this is a request that all the agencies are asking to the insurance companies to, first of all, have a very, very wide coverage of cancellation motives. And the other thing is that flexibility and softer cancellation policies are really needed. I think this is necessary, because the student is always asking, what happens if I cannot go, if something happens to my family, something happens to me, if I cannot go to the country where I'm aiming to go, or if something happens in my home country. So there are so many doubts and question marks that a more open and flexible cancellation policy, I think it's needed. And that's my opinion. I think this is the opinion of many, many agents all over the world.
And it sounds like it's become a much more complex process.
It is.
I'm just going to bring in, we've got our colleague Josh monitoring questions for us. So if you hear an additional voice and wonder where it's coming from, that will be Josh. Have we got any questions in the chat? Or have you received any questions, Josh?
Hi there, Matt. We do have a question for the panel. Will Malta be the most popular ELT destination this summer?
So, so Malta has, well, we touched upon sort of green list and amber lists earlier, but they mean different things in different places. So an amber to the UK means a quarantine period. An amber for Malta doesn't equal a quarantine period, and I believe most European countries are on the amber list. Paolo, are you seeing a interest for Malta as perhaps the easiest ELT destination to go to?
Yes, definitely. But also the UK has been the first country to reopen schools. If I remember well, the first schools they reopened in March the 8th, and then subsequently it was March 15th and so on.
Yeah.
So the feeling, the information, that the message that you sent out, the UK schools, was we're ready to open, vaccination is working. The UK schools, they had the roadmap, date by date, what is opening, now we can do this, more socializing, more shops and bars and restaurants open. There are even some schools that they decided to open not the 8th of March or the 15th of March, but in April, because then at that date would have been possible to make the students socialize and have activities. So I think that the UK has been first in the list of this reopening process, and this will pay back. But then, of course, Malta is also opening right now. You know, the weather and the beach and everything. Everybody wants to be open air now and to enjoy nature and the sun. So definitely it will be a very popular destination this summer.
And how about, could it be, well, I won't say good year, but maybe the market share of the non-English languages. I'm sure Eleri would like to hear a positive answer to that. But it might be easier to travel between Italy, Spain, Germany, France, and to study those languages than flying to the UK or Ireland or Malta. Have you any sense of that?
We as agents?
Yeah.
Yes. Even before Germany, Spain, and France, they opened quite quickly. In the past, before the second or the third wave, I don't even remember how many COVID waves that we've been facing. But anyway, there was a moment, even last summer, that Spain, France, and Germany, they were open again, and you can drive, you can take a train. Of course, the channel makes it necessary to fly, and as we said before, flights are a big, question mark. We don't know. There is a lot of uncertainty about which flights are actually working and prices and everything.
Are you seeing that, Eleri? The sort of inquiries from neighbouring countries?
Most of the inquiries are coming in from Europe. I think we'll have I think we're going to have a positive summer in the sense that we're open. Groupement Fleur schools are open. We're looking forward to welcoming people. I think there is a pent-up demand, but as Paolo's listed, it's very difficult for people to make decisions. I think they're spending longer asking questions, and then we'll get the last-minute booking. And I think most of them will be from Europe, because talking for France, we have certain countries that we cannot have students. And until June the 9th, when the sort of next level of restrictions are lifted, we're not really sure about how it's going to work for short stays for countries where you don't need a visa for the first 90 days. I mean, hopefully things will be positive. Speaking personally, I see that if I compare the month of May 2020, the bookings that I've received this month in 2021 are 10% up on last year. But obviously, we're not talking sort of in the olden days when we had lots and lots of students. But I think generally it's a very positive feel. There's definitely movement, but I think people will take longer. And I very much agree with Paolo that as a school, it's really very important that we give clear, precise information so that our agency partners they have all of that information, but there's no doubt. Because I think if in a situation as we're all going through right now, if there's sort of a slight area, a grey area, then people will find it even more difficult to make up their minds.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, should we move on to our next topic now? Earlier, we mentioned briefly our global agency survey, which has been released recently and was completed by 213 agencies. To recap, overall business was down 78% and language business was down by 84%. Now, Paolo, what's the sense in the agency market for this year and possibly going forward? Do you think things are going to be picking up?
Yeah, the 84% down in the language sector tells you that, I mean, short courses and not necessary courses, because often quite a big share of our market is people that they also travel for pleasure, for culture. It's not so much needed. Of course, there are some courses like exam preparation courses or business English or executive English. But in this case, when people really needed to attend a course and to get a certification or to improve their skills in a language, they've done it online. So that was the part of courses that the online solution was really working, have been working. But for this kind of very beautiful experience that we sell, which is a mix of vacation, cultural experience, and language, well, they can wait. And this is what happened in 2020. And this explains the 84% decrease, which is huge. And I really am amazed and surprised how resilient we have been, both schools and agents, because we are still here waiting for better periods or better times. Then the longer the period, the more exclusive, the more special the experience, the less has been the percentage decrease. For example, tertiary education, if you want to really have this experience of 1 year abroad, an academic year abroad, you do it, because there is only one chance in your life, which is 1 year during your high school period, and the second, even university and everything. So longer courses, longer programs have suffered less, and these are also the programs and the courses that they picked up quicker. I mean, in Italy, in Europe, we see many more students wanting to book in September for the start of an academic year in the UK, in Ireland, in France, in Germany, and in Spain. The longer periods makes easier to accept a quarantine, for example, and the fact that all the courses, they will start in September, people are optimists and they think that in September the situation will be much better than now.
Eleri, the students that you have, are they sort of longer term? Are they sort of pathway students? What kind of?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Again, I agree with Paolo. I've seen the reservations that I've had, the bookings that I've had over this last, say from the end of last summer, have all been either diploma courses, exam preparation for DELF and DELF, or they've been long-term students coming in to get the level required to move on then to higher education. We've had some short-term courses, but very few and far between. That sort of area of the market, as Paolo says, quite rightly, has been online. So the online has been a success, and I don't think that's something that's going to go away.
Okay, thank you. And Paolo, how much has the pandemic changed the way of working for agencies, the day-to-day practices? And do you think these changes are permanent, or are things starting to sort of shift back to how they were before the pandemic?
Well, of course, everyone has been forced to work online from a distance. I mean, all these meetings that we are experiencing, I mean, it will be a Zoom online age that we are getting into. But I think that everything that will cut costs for the agencies and doesn't affect negatively the relationship with the student, it's to stay, because this will rationalize a lot the expenses of an agency and giving more profit. And we have been now, everybody is accustomed to do what we're doing right now, to talk and discuss online. Students will be definitely any age range. Of course, the young ones are already ready for that, but also the more mature ones, they are now accustomed to talk through a computer screen. And we will continue like that. So as the schools, they have hybrid courses, I believe that the agents will have also an hybrid service. There will be less people into the offices, more people working from home. And I also think that schools and agents, they could, take advantage of this technology. For example, if I counsel a student, now I have the possibility to be with Eleri now, and together with our two faces talk to a student, like we are doing it now. So I think we have to take all the positive things that the negative pandemic has given us. So try to see the bright side of it, if there is any, and also the relationship with the school should be tighter. I believe that the schools, they, especially good quality middle-sized schools, they understand even more how vital is to have a good network of agents in the different countries.
Okay, well, that's our next question. So obviously there's been some difficulties. Agents and schools have had to face difficulties together, and there may have been some conflict along the way. So what good things do you think have come out of these sort of changes, the new ways of working, and are these likely to last in the future?
I don't see any. we had problems, Eleri? Not at all.
No, I think it's oh, I think everybody had the sort of the big problem. Oh my goodness, it's a pandemic. But afterwards, I think we've all realized that actually we can build our futures together very much more easily by using the online option. It's also something that's much greener, and I think that's very important. I think schools and agencies and people generally have become more aware through this pandemic that pandemics don't just happen in a vacuum, that they're because of various government policies, global policies that have not really taken enough attention of what the planet needs, of what animals need. So without getting on a high horse or anything, I think it's very important that all schools consider this. And of course, we don't have to travel so much. Agencies don't have to travel so much, especially for those relationships that we have that have been built up over a long time. We've been on the phone, we've been on the Zoom, we've been on the Skype, etc. So those agents' relationships haven't gone away. They've been strengthened through this pandemic. I think the key words again are flexibility. It's seeing each other's point of view. We both know that we need to have more flexible conditions, but we also both know that we need to protect each other's business. That in fact the relationship between a school and an agency has become much more important in a way, because we're interdependent. It's really very much like well, it always was like a marriage, but it's become much more, I think, much more obvious that you have to give a little in order to get back a little. You can't just say, no, it's going to be like this. There's got to be more flexibility on both sides, much more of a notion of fair trade within the industry. I think that's something that has been brought home to us all through this pandemic.
Yeah, protect each other. It's very important, actually. And especially quality agents and quality schools, they should support each other even more. Though, I mean, I was joking a bit before, but of course I was kidding. But we have gone through difficult times, the agencies. When the pandemic started, we have been facing a shock, unexpected shock, huge shock. And well, the big problem was the money, because the agents, they had to refund a lot of clients from the flights and from the courses and accommodation. And of course, there has been a little friction between schools and agents. We should learn from, let's say, our mistakes, and try not to repeat it. And I think that we should find a way that the payments are secured somewhere, so that the schools, they know that the money is there somewhere safe. And the agents, they know that the money is there somewhere safe, ready to go to the school bank account if the course and the accommodation, all the services are actually provided. This is the idea of settling or using an escrow account. I know it is very difficult to realize that in a short time, but I think we must change something, because everything has been based on trust. And until everything goes well, trust is more than enough. When there is a problem, the first thing that we lose is trust in each other.
And is that something that you're hoping to push forward on the FELCA front? Yes,
FELCA is working on a draft or of a global contract, and FELCA is working also as well in trying to find an escrow account that could help all the FELCA agents to put the money safe somewhere until it gets to the schools. I know it's a very big project. I know it's something
don't you think,
completely
Paolo,
new.
that actually students are taking that into their own hands, in the sense that they're waiting till the last minute to book? That's one of the consequences of this situation, isn't it? That people, as you said earlier on, that there's so many questions, so many doubts, so they don't book 6 months ahead. They ask questions, they come to the agency again and again, or they ask the school, or they find out as much as they can. And the increase I see personally in really last minute it's been growing. It's been a trend that's been growing for the last 3 years, but it's really quite dramatic at the moment.
I agree, Eleri, but this is not something that we can face or can, it is something for now. Nobody wants last minute bookings because you cannot plan and we cannot plan. So in a perfect world in the future, when everything will go back to normal, and maybe bookings will be, coming to our offices 3-4 months in advance, still we have to think that, something like that can happen again, and we have to be ready for that.
Oh, absolutely. I just saying that I think it's a feature of the situation in which both schools and agencies find themselves in right now, that we have this sort of last minute education.
Yes.
Going to be a late booking summer.
Well, we'd rather have late bookings than no bookings.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think I can speak for everybody in the industry.
Okay, and the last question before we get some questions from the audience: has the pandemic made the role of the agent more important, do you think? Paolo, do you want to go first?
Yes. Simple answer, yes. But the role of the agent has always been important, even before. Yes, we can say so. Even more important now. Yes.
Okay, and Eleri, would you agree with that?
Well, I'm not an agent, so.
But you use your partners with them. So do you think?
Yeah. So obviously, I think really it's not necessarily making them more important. It's just highlighting their role. They've always been important. The relationship between the schools and the agents has always been important, and we both need each other. And I think really that's the core message that I would rather see highlighted. It's not that any one side of this duo is more important. It's just that we've come to a recognition that we really do need each other. We really do need to have a certain, even still now, a trust and a good working relationship is really important. But the clients are asking more, and they're asking more details. They're asking for a lot more in-depth information, and they obviously rely more on the agency in that negotiation process than they do for the school. But there's also, obviously, the pandemic has changed everything with the way the global education and global business markets are going. And so there's so much more information around the place for people. And I think what we will see is that students will do all their homework, and then they'll go perhaps to an agency to get that final approval and reassurance. And I think, yes, I would agree with Paolo there, the agency is more important. But for me, agencies have always been important. What the pandemic's shown is that they need schools and schools need them.
Okay, thank you.
Shall we bring in the voice of the questions again, Josh? Do we have any questions on this topic?
Yeah, so we do have a question. Just before that, though, just a quick point of clarification from Eric Dewey. Could you just clarify the period of time that this graph captures, just the time frame there?
Oh, okay. It's from 2016 is the first lot of figures. It's basically the length of time that we've been doing a global agency survey, an annual survey. So we started in 2016, and then the latest one is 2020. So it's 5 years. It's 5 years worth of data. And obviously it's everything. I mean, we've always had an increase before in all the sectors, and then there's last year was a pretty huge decline. Any other questions, Josh?
Yes, just another one on that topic. Why were the secondary and higher educational tertiary sectors not so badly affected, do you think?
I think sort of Paolo maybe addressed that earlier somewhat, that with the idea that if you're going away for, you have a limited time period to do a year abroad for a secondary study, or you don't want to keep deferring for university, and those longer term programs, you'd be more willing to accept a 2-week quarantine period. So I think that would explain the figures for the secondary and tertiary sectors. And one of our news stories today showed that from the Independent Schools Council in the UK, the numbers weren't actually down all that much, although they had to do the census slightly differently this year because the schools were physically closed at the time they did the census. But so some of those students may have been online, but nonetheless their enrollments were only down 16%, which is not too bad. And of course, the UK was one of the destinations that was probably most accessible through 2020 in terms of secondary business, whereas Canada was closed for some of the year. Australia and New Zealand were closed. So I don't know if anybody wants to add anything to that.
If I can add something to what you said, Matt. When you go abroad for secondary or tertiary education, this is a life project, and you don't quit a life project. You don't give up for a life project. You fight more. So you anyway go, while for a 2, 3, 4 week language course, you can say, well, next year it's not so relevant, it's not so necessary to your career, while secondary and tertiary, it's really life planning, and you don't give up so easily on that.
And also, Paolo, like you said originally, the cost for a very short program and the travel restrictions, you can see that clearly in the graph, can't you?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any more questions, Josh? I think we can probably open up at this point to take questions from any topic.
Yeah, so we have a couple of more general questions for the panel too. The first one from Mackenzie Kirby, and that is, what sort of support are international students in the US eligible for?
So that related to one of the news stories. Yeah, it was. It's the funding that so it's for higher education students, and it's funding that's distributed through the universities. So I believe it's at the discretion of the institution, although they're sort of urged to support those most in need. But what's changed is that was previously only they were only allowed to give that to domestic students, but they can now allocate funding to international students if they see fit. But it's for universities, if that answers the question. Thank you for the question.
And we do have another question that's just come in from Peter Norris. How have you managed time zone differences for online study, and do you see future with both online and face-to-face teaching separately, or more hybrid study options?
Eleri, shall we let you answer that one? you're juggling those questions.
Yes, well, there are lots of different options, aren't there, as a reply to that. It depends again on the class. So if it was speaking personally, our DELF and DALF preparation classes sort of sits neatly where it's either early or very early or late or quite late. So that was helpful. And that's been the most successful product online. I know some schools have had complete, options throughout the day. Some schools have partnered with other schools in different areas to be able to do that. So it's been a lot of creativity in replying to those time zone questions. And yes, personally, I think it's great that we've been able to transform our schools into online, not battleships, but online educational establishments, and welcome students from markets that we didn't have before, markets where it was too expensive, or people felt that it was too difficult to get a visa. So that's given schools a huge new boost in terms of where they can receive students from. So I think that's incredibly positive. And we found that in the class with a hybrid class, that a student from Peru or from Algeria that we might not have had before has been a super asset in the interculturality of our French classes. So I think that this is something that we'll build on, and we'll see more and more of. So all positive from my point of view.
Paolo, have you has the online market allowed you to sort of tap into any sort of clienteles that you might not have been able to before, or do you think that it may be too soon for that, but it might come?
I think it'll come, definitely. What it did allow us to do was to remain open and have the range of classes and the range of levels that people expect. And it did mean that our students had, as I say, meetings with other students from different nationalities, that we weren't just limited to a European clientele, that we have had a wide range of students from across the globe. So, as I say, for me, it's been a positive experience. We say, invention, creativity comes in a difficult time. So I think most of the schools I know have provided, they've been able to react, they've been able to adapt. And I think we should all say, well done. Well done. Yes, definitely. Well done, all of us, for doing it, for being here, and for changing the face of education in such a short space of time.
I agree, Eleri. Online courses are here to stay, for sure, combined with face-to-face in presence courses. So it will be a package altogether. Everybody remembers, I believe, when many schools, they were offering, some access to their website, where students, they could study French, English, Spanish before getting actually to the school. That was a complete different experience. This was alone in front of your computer. It was an online course. Now what the schools are offering, it's a sort of reproduction of a classroom with interaction with people from different countries. It's also a way to know the students that you will meet in a few weeks or in a few months, going to Eleri school or any other school. So I think this is a real plus for our products, and definitely also examination. I think they should go a lot for online examinations, because this will make it much more flexible for everybody, for agents and students and schools as well.
I think it corresponds to post-pandemic. People aren't going to necessarily have the time or the budget, but they're still going to have a need. So the online option definitely fits in there. It's also, Paolo mentioned earlier in the chat that people need reassurance that they're coming, they're asking more questions, they're coming into the agency or phoning, asking for more information. So starting a course online before they go to the school gives them a chance to meet the teachers that they'll have in the future. As Paolo's just said, students that they may get on with or be in proximity with. I think it's been a really interesting journey from a school's point of view to see how we've developed, and the classes and the techniques, the different techniques that our teachers have all really created from this awful situation into something super positive.
I also might add that this is something that you can use as a tool, because an online course is a little bit cheaper. Sometimes it's much more cheaper than the course in presence. This is a way to show the student that the school we are suggesting them, it's a very good quality school. Take an online course, see how the teachers are good quality, how the methodology is perfect for you. And then they book again in presence with no doubt at all. They know they like it. They already are part of the family of that school.
Very good. Very good.
And also as follow-up courses, it's not just something that I've seen that people have have started online and then come into the school, or they're asking booking. Oh, I've only got 12 weeks, but I don't feel that's enough given the level I'm setting myself as my objective. So can I start online, and then if I want to carry on, can I maintain my level? So it's given a whole new layer of possible courses and options for students.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Josh, is there anything else on the chat?
That's it for audience questions.
Okay. All right. Well, I think then that's it for our very first Study Travel TV live broadcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much to our special guests for their input and wise words.
Thank you for inviting
positivity
us.
and
Thank
everything.
you.
Wonderful. It's nearly 6 o'clock where you are, so can I get you a virtual drink, a drink from Matt's virtual bar? Sponsorship opportunity there if anyone's interested next week. Okay, and thank you to our sponsor Londonist for sponsoring this first show. We'll be hosting these broadcasts every fortnight on a Friday, so the next one will be on the 28th of May at the same time, 4 p.m. British summertime, and we hope to see you there. So thank you very much everyone for tuning in.
Thank you.